and then in a tent in sight of the elementary school where her son was once a student. She constantly scrambled to move her belongings to avoid racking up more fines from the police. And she said, I never expected it to come to this at 55 years of age.
Hateful. I mean, this is what we're doing.
When I read the story, I thought about a camp I had visited in North Carolina where a woman had lost her job at a furniture factory, swept the dirt in the homeless camp to welcome us to her home in the woods
right now,
where black and white and brown and children were living. And Helen said to me, I may not make it out of here,
last time. I mean, we're looking,
but please don't forget me and tell people what's really happening.
To stop the
I thought about Leon, whom I met at a camp outside of Aberdeen, Washington.
And I'm seeing,
and he asked me why this country could trust him to operate million-dollar equipment in Iraq,
come together,
but couldn't trust him to flip a hamburger right here at home.
The Supreme Court,
and why he was homeless, his fiance was homeless, and he watched his brother die.
It's a cruel and unusual punishment to punish somebody.
According to the federal government, there are only 670,000 unhoused people in the United States. And I'm here today to say that's a lie.
That is acceptable, that is
somebody's been lying, and it's gone on far too long.
Even though they're doing it,
come up here, y'all.
The rest of the states have to go along with it.
And we can't be silent anymore.
So as you're seeing,
it's not only a lie, it's a damn lie. And we ought not be repeating their numbers out here. And I say that as a preacher because the Jesus I follow knew that lies that kill people must be cursed.
I'm hoping that the Supreme Court actually comes up with
Repairers of the Breach, the Kairos Center, Leslie Harris, and the Poor People's Campaign commissioned a study a few years ago that found there is not a county in this country, in the 21st century, in the wealthiest country in the world, where someone working a full-time job at the current minimum wage can even afford a basic two-bedroom apartment. Not one county. More than 50 million Americans today earn less than a living wage of $15 an hour. We may not have a good way to count them, but what we know is that there are tens of millions of Americans who can't afford a place to live, who are on the brink of homelessness, who are homeless some part of the year. They may sleep at bus stations, they sleep in their cars, they crash on friends' couches, they double and triple up sometimes. But homelessness is an epidemic in this, the richest nation in the history of the world. And when we don't tell the truth about that, then folks lie about people, and they lie about folk like Sister Laura and Sister Helen and Brother Leon. And there are plenty of lies going around. Christopher Raffo, the same wedge issue warrior who stirred up lies about CRT and DEI, has dug up some data he's using to lie about people like Sister Laura. He says the research shows that most people are unhoused, are either addicted or mentally ill. Now, anybody who's ever done research can tell you that's bad social science, because correlation doesn't imply causation. And most of the time, folk are not homeless because they're addicted. They get addicted because they're homeless. But we don't even need to have an argument about that, because we're not talking about the same group of people. It's not 670,000 people who are impacted by America's crisis of poverty. Today, it's 135 million people in this country who are poor and or low wealth. It's half of our children. It's over 40% of our adults. Percentage-wise, more people of color are poor and low wealth. But in raw numbers, white people are more. White people are 40 million more. White people are poor and low wealth than people of color. 800 people die a day from poverty. 295,000 people a year die from poverty. When 7 people died from vaping, we had congressional hearings and White House coming together. It would take you 600 years of having funerals every day to bury the people that will die just this year from poverty. What they're doing, listen, I'm almost through, they're trying to isolate a small group of people so they can blame them for policy decisions that are hurting nearly half of all Americans, and in truth are undermining the promise of democracy for us all. People are not addicted and then become homelessness. Our economic system is addicted to greed. Our economic system is addicted to what Julian Malvo calls capitalism. Our system is addicted to greed rather than addicted to justice and compassion, about housing and to ensure social safety net and shelters. We are addicted to bailing out banks and corporations and treating corporations like people.
Yes,
You
yes.
look
yes.
familiar to me. My
Yeah,
name's
Bail out
Celeste.
corporations when they
Yes, I
fall
work with Jesse.
because of greed, but we let
As
people
well
fall
as-
Name, I'm
through the cracks.
sorry.
Andrew.
Human
Yeah,
beings
so,
stumble into
yeah,
homelessness
yeah.
because of hard
No,
times.
no, you're good. I'm very good. So what do you think about it? Do you mind if I can I ask you a few questions
If
on
you
on
lie
camera?
about
I'm not
poor
all that
people,
educated.
then you
Doesn't
get
matter.
away
I
with
mean,
blaming
your
them for their
opinion
problems.
is value.
Poverty and homeless is not some
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
gonna- I'm
damn
just gonna take a couple of
glorified
footage.
vacation.
So
People are dying.
So what's your expectation for today's Supreme Court decision?
I really don't know what direction they might be leaning in, but it's really important that people have the right to, not be arrested when they are just simply trying to survive.
So you don't think it's cruel and unusual punishment? So what's your opinion on the cruel and unusual punishment, the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution? This is sort of what the Supreme Court is being asked to deal with. So, I mean, what's your take on it?
Well, I mean, it seems cruel to me not to provide an alternative for people. I mean, the solution is all the signs say is housing.
Exactly.
And we need housing that people can afford. And that's really the bottom line. In some ways, it's not that complicated. Everyone needs a place to stay. Yeah.
So is there a solution in the works? Do you think it's going to come down? Do you think people, unhoused neighbors will get housing eventually?
Eventually, but I really think we have to really move heaven and earth to get more funding for housing, throughout the country. It's a national problem that we haven't addressed yet, I think.
Okay, thank you very much for your opinion. I appreciate it. So there you go, folks. I mean, this is what we're dealing with right now. So hopefully the Supreme Court will not rule that it's cruel and unusual to punish people for just being homeless. So stay tuned. Yep.
Good job. Thank you.
They are God's children. They are human beings, like every one of us here. And my faith tradition is clear. It says they are precious in the sight of God. Proverbs 29 says the righteous care about justice, but the wicked have no good. Exodus says every 7 years leave something for those who are hurting and those who are judged by how you treat the least of these. Proverbs their ears to the cries of the poor will also have God's ears shut toward their cries. Jesus said we must preach good to the poor. Isaiah 58 says only when you welcome the homeless and the poor into your home will the nation be repaired.